There's a performance happening right now, in this very moment, and you're both the actor and the audience. It's a performance so subtle, so deeply woven into the fabric of your daily existence, that you've probably never stopped to examine it consciously. You're wearing a face, not your actual face, but a carefully constructed presentation of yourself that you show to the world around you. And here's what's fascinating. What Niccolò Machiavelli understood 5 centuries ago when he sat in exile contemplating the nature of power and human interaction. You're not just wearing one face. You're wearing many. You switch between them so seamlessly, so automatically, that you don't even realize you're doing it. You have one face for your family, another for your colleagues, another for strangers, another for friends, another for those you're trying to impress, and another for those you're trying to intimidate. We are, all of us, walking galleries of masks, changing them as fluidly as we change rooms in a house. But Machiavelli, in his ruthless clarity, his refusal to accept comfortable illusions about human nature, identified something crucial. Among all these faces we wear, among all these masks we cycle through unconsciously, there are 3 that matter above all others. 3 faces that, if mastered deliberately and consciously, give you a level of social power and strategic advantage that most people never achieve because they're still wearing their masks unconsciously and reactively, without understanding what they're doing or why. These 3 faces are not about deception in the crude sense. They're not about lying or pretending to be someone you're not. They're about understanding that you contain multitudes, that you have access to different aspects of yourself, and that the masterful person learns which aspect to present in which situation to achieve their goals while maintaining their integrity. Let me start by painting you a picture of what happens when you don't master these faces, when you show the wrong face at the wrong time. Imagine a young professional, talented and ambitious, sitting in a meeting with senior executives. She has brilliant ideas and genuinely innovative thinking that could transform the project they're discussing. But she presents these ideas with the face she uses with her friends, casual and informal, speaking in the language of enthusiasm and excitement without the structure and gravitas that this particular room demands. Her ideas are dismissed, not because they're bad, but because the face she's showing doesn't match the context. The executives can't see past the presentation to the substance beneath. She's wearing the wrong mask, and it costs her. Or consider a father coming home from a brutal day at work, where he had to be hard, strategic, and unyielding, showing the face that his professional world demands. He walks through his front door still wearing that face, and his young daughter runs up to him wanting to play, wanting connection, wanting the warmth and presence that children need. But he can't switch faces. He responds to her with the same hardness he was using in the boardroom, and she withdraws, hurt and confused. He's damaged something precious because he couldn't master the transition between faces. This is what most people do. They either show the same face in every situation, which makes them inflexible and often inappropriate, or they switch faces unconsciously and reactively, which means they're being controlled by circumstances rather than consciously choosing their presentation. Machiavelli observed that the truly powerful, the truly effective people in any domain are those who master the conscious, deliberate deployment of different faces in different contexts. And among all the possible faces you might wear, there are 3 that form the foundation of all social power and strategic interaction. Master these 3, and you master the game of human relations in a way that most people never will, because they don't even know the game exists. The first face is what Machiavelli would call the public face, though he might have used different language. This is the face of authority, competence, and controlled presentation. It's the face you show when you need to be taken seriously, when you need to command respect, and when you need others to see you as capable and in control. This is not your authentic self in the sense of letting everything hang out, sharing every thought and feeling, and being completely unfiltered. This is your disciplined self, your professional self, and your strategic self. And here's what most people misunderstand about this face. It's not fake. It's not a lie. It's simply a choice about which aspects of your complex, multifaceted personality you're going to emphasize in this particular context. Think about it this way. You contain within you the capacity for seriousness and for silliness, for formality and for casualness, for restraint and for expressiveness. All of these are genuinely you. The public face is the conscious choice to emphasize certain qualities: discipline, competence, measured speech, strategic thinking, while de-emphasizing others that, while also genuinely part of you, would undermine your effectiveness in this particular situation. When you're negotiating a business deal, when you're leading a team through a crisis, when you're representing yourself or your organization in a high-stakes situation, the public face is what you need. It communicates that you are someone who should be taken seriously, someone who has considered the implications of what you're saying and doing, and someone who operates from strategy rather than impulse. Machiavelli observed that leaders who couldn't maintain this public face, who let their personal feelings and unfiltered reactions show too readily in public contexts, quickly lost authority and respect. Not because people demand that leaders be emotionless robots, but because the public face signals something important. It signals that you have enough self-control to separate your personal reactions from your strategic actions, that you're not going to make impulsive decisions based on momentary emotions, and that you can be trusted to think several moves ahead rather than just reacting to what's immediately in front of you. This is why maintaining the public face is exhausting. It requires constant vigilance, constant self-monitoring, and constant conscious choice about what you reveal and what you contain. But it's also why it's so effective. In a world full of people who are constantly leaking their emotions and reactions, the person who can maintain composure, who can show the public face consistently, stands out as someone unusual, someone powerful, someone to be reckoned with. But here's where it gets interesting, where Machiavelli's insight becomes truly profound. The public face, while necessary, is not sufficient. If you only ever show the public face, if you never let it down, you become cold, distant, and inhuman. People will respect you, but they won't trust you. They won't feel connected to you. They'll follow your orders, but they won't be loyal to you. They'll work with you, but they won't work for you with genuine enthusiasm and commitment. This is because the public face, by its very nature, creates distance. It says, I am in control, I am competent, and I am strategic. But it doesn't say, I am human, I understand you, I care about you. And this is where the second face becomes essential. The second face is what we might call the private face, the face of genuine connection, vulnerability, and humanity. This is the face you show to the trusted few, the people in your inner circle, the relationships where you can let down the constant vigilance of the public face and simply be present, be real, be fallible and emotional and unguarded. Machiavelli understood, perhaps more deeply than he's given credit for, that even the most strategic, the most calculating, and the most power-focused individuals need these relationships where they can show their private face. Because the public face, necessary as it is a burden. Maintaining it constantly is not just exhausting, it's dehumanizing. You need spaces and relationships where you don't have to perform, where you can show doubt, express fear, admit mistakes, and be silly or sad or confused without it being used against you or undermining your position. The private face is not weakness. It's renewal. It's the maintenance of your humanity in the midst of strategic living. Machiavelli himself demonstrated this. His political writings are cold, analytical, and sometimes shockingly pragmatic to the point of appearing amoral. But his personal letters to friends reveal a man capable of deep feeling, playfulness, melancholy, and genuine affection. He showed his public face in his political work and his private face in his personal relationships, and understanding this distinction is crucial. The private face is reserved for those who have earned it, for those who you trust not to exploit the vulnerability you're showing, and for those who understand that what they're seeing is not weakness, but a gift of genuine human connection. Most people make one of two mistakes with these first two faces. Either they showed the private face too readily, to too many people, in too many situations, which leads to them being taken advantage of, not being taken seriously, and having their emotional reactions and vulnerabilities used against them. Or they never show the private face at all. They maintain the public face constantly with everyone, which leads to isolation, burnout, and relationships that are strategic rather than genuinely nourishing. The masterful person, the person Machiavelli would recognize as truly sophisticated in their understanding of social dynamics, knows when to show which face. They maintain the public face in contexts that demand it, professional settings, high-stakes situations, and interactions with people who haven't earned deeper access. And they allow the private face to emerge with the trusted few who have demonstrated over time that they can be trusted with that level of authenticity and vulnerability. But there's a third face, and this is where Machiavelli's genius really shines, where his understanding of human psychology becomes almost frighteningly acute. The third face is what we might call the shadow face, though Machiavelli might have called it the face of necessary ruthlessness, the face of strategic hardness, the face you show when soft approaches have failed and harder measures are required. This is the face of the person who can do what needs to be done even when it's uncomfortable, even when it goes against their natural inclinations, even when it requires them to be harder and more ruthless than they would prefer to be. The shadow face is not cruelty for its own sake. It's not about being mean or vindictive or enjoying the exercise of power over others. It's about the recognition that sometimes in certain situations, with certain people, niceness doesn't work. Diplomacy doesn't work. Soft approaches are interpreted as weakness and are exploited. Machiavelli observed again and again that leaders who could not access their shadow face, who could not be hard when hardness was required, were inevitably destroyed by those who had no such qualms. He watched as kind, well-meaning rulers were overthrown by more ruthless adversaries. He saw generous patrons betrayed by the very people they had helped. He witnessed over and over the tragedy of good people failing because they couldn't bring themselves to do the difficult, uncomfortable, sometimes harsh things that their situations demanded. And this is perhaps his most controversial insight, the one that earned him his dark reputation, that virtue without the capacity for strategic ruthlessness is not virtue at all. It's naivety. It's weakness disguised as morality. True virtue, true goodness, requires the strength to protect itself, to enforce boundaries, and to respond to bad faith with appropriate hardness. The shadow face is what you show when someone repeatedly violates your boundaries despite clear communication. It's what you show when an employee who you've tried to help and develop continues to underperform and drag down the team. It's what you show when a negotiating partner is clearly trying to exploit your goodwill and take advantage of your fairness. The shadow face says, without apology, without excessive explanation, and without the softening that characterizes most social interaction. No. This ends now. These are the consequences. And then follows through with those consequences without wavering, without being manipulated by guilt or appeals to sympathy or attempts to make you feel like you're being cruel or unreasonable. Most people are terrible at accessing their shadow face. They either don't have access to it at all, which means they get walked over repeatedly, or they confuse it with simply being angry or mean, which means when they do try to show it, it comes out as emotional reactivity rather than strategic hardness. The shadow face is not hot anger. It's cold clarity. It's not emotional volatility. It's a calculated consequence. It's not about making the other person suffer. It's about protecting yourself and what you value by being willing to do what softer approaches could not accomplish. Machiavelli would say that the person who cannot access their shadow face, who cannot be hard when hardness is required, will inevitably be victimized by those who have no such limitations. Now here's the crucial synthesis, the place where these three faces come together into something that transcends any one of them in isolation. The master, the person who has truly understood what Machiavelli was teaching, knows which face to show when. They don't show the private face in public contexts where it will be exploited. They don't maintain the public face constantly to the point where they burn out and lose their humanity. They don't resort to the shadow face as their default, which would make them cruel and isolated. Instead, they move fluidly between these faces based on conscious assessment of the situation, the people involved, and what they're trying to achieve. This is not manipulation. This is sophistication. This is social intelligence operating at its highest level. With your family, with your closest friends, and with the people who have earned deep access to you, you show primarily the private face. You allow yourself to be vulnerable, emotional, uncertain, and playful. You let them see the parts of you that the world doesn't see, and in that vulnerability, genuine connection becomes possible. With your colleagues, with professional contacts, and with people you're negotiating or competing with, you show primarily the public face. You are composed, strategic, and thoughtful in what you reveal. You maintain appropriate boundaries. You present yourself as someone competent and in control. And with people who have proven through their behavior that they will exploit kindness, who respond to softness with aggression, and who mistake patience for weakness, you show the shadow face. You are clear, firm, and immovable. You enforce consequences without apology or excessive explanation. The beauty of mastering these three faces is that you become adaptable without losing yourself. You're not the same person in every situation, which would be inflexible and often inappropriate. But you're also not a different person in every situation, which would be fragmenting and ultimately lead to a loss of coherent self. Instead, you're consciously choosing which aspects of your multifaceted self to emphasize based on strategic assessment of what the situation requires. You remain integrated and whole while being appropriately responsive to different contexts. Machiavelli lived this wisdom himself, though it cost him dearly at times. In his political career, he showed the public face, strategic, diplomatic, and carefully calibrated in everything he said and did. In his personal letters and friendships, he showed the private face, warm, funny, vulnerable, and deeply feeling. And when circumstances demanded it, when he was imprisoned and tortured, when he faced adversity that would have broken less resilient people, he accessed his shadow face, hard, unbreakable, refusing to be destroyed by circumstances that would have legitimately excused complete collapse. He survived not because he was invulnerable, but because he understood which face the situation demanded and had done the inner work necessary to access it. This is the work that mastering these three faces requires. It's not just about performing or pretending. It's about developing these capacities within yourself so that they're available when needed. It's about cultivating the self-control and composure that the public face requires. It's about maintaining the capacity for genuine vulnerability and connection that the private face demands. It's about developing the strength and clarity to access the shadow face when softer approaches have failed. And perhaps most importantly, it's about developing the wisdom to know which face to show when, to read situations and people accurately enough that you're deploying the appropriate face for the context. So here's what I want you to do. Start paying attention to the faces you're showing. Notice when you're showing your private face in situations that demand your public face, and observe the consequences. Notice when you're maintaining your public face in relationships that deserve your private face, and see how that creates distance and prevents genuine connection. Notice when situations call for your shadow face, but you continue trying to be nice or accommodating, and watch how that invites further exploitation. And conversely, notice when you deploy your shadow face in situations that called for gentler approaches, and see how that damages relationships unnecessarily. This awareness is the first step. The second step is deliberate practice. Start consciously choosing which face to show based on strategic assessment rather than unconscious habit or emotional reaction. Practice maintaining your public face even when you feel like breaking down. Practice showing your private face even when it feels risky. Practice accessing your shadow face even when it feels uncomfortable or goes against your self-image as a nice person. These are skills, and like all skills, they improve with conscious practice. Machiavelli's genius was not in inventing these faces. We all use them to some degree, whether we realize it or not. His genius was in identifying them clearly, in understanding their strategic importance, and in recognizing that mastery of these faces is one of the fundamental components of social power and personal effectiveness. The person who has truly mastered these three faces becomes someone remarkable. They're respected in public contexts because they show appropriate gravitas and control. They're loved by their inner circle because they can be genuinely vulnerable and present. And they're feared by those who might try to exploit them because they've proven willing to be hard when hardness is required. This is not about becoming manipulative or fake. It's about becoming sophisticated, about developing the full range of human capacities and learning to deploy them wisely. It's about understanding that you are complex enough to contain all three of these faces authentically, and that the path to mastery is not in being the same all the time, but in being appropriately responsive to what each situation and relationship requires. That's the wisdom Machiavelli offers us across 5 centuries. Master these three faces, and you master the game of human interaction in ways that most people never even recognize as possible. That's the power he identified. That's the sophistication he achieved. And that's the path he's offering you, if you're wise enough and brave enough to walk it. You now know the three faces that separate the powerful from the powerless. But knowing isn't mastering. Subscribe to Dark Psychology Ascent and learn to wield these principles with precision. Every week, we reveal the strategies that Machiavelli, Nietzsche, and Jung understood, the uncomfortable truths about human nature that give you the advantage. Stop showing the wrong face at the wrong time. Start mastering the game. Subscribe now.